Alright guys, and welcome back. So the day one of the Pro Tour Final Fantasy has just ended, and we're going to explore one particular spicy build that has made it to day two, and particularly finished day one with 18 points or 6 wins and 2 losses. So this build was also featured in an article of one of the spiciest list on the Pro Tour, and this was currently being played by Josh Morton. So Josh Morton played this green white or Selesnya Gearhulk. So now we're going to explore now its build with the current setup and see if there are new cards from the Final Fantasy set that has been considered under this archetype. So let's check on the artifacts. So particularly non-creature artifacts here are 9. Only 1 battle, Invasion of Gobakan, 28 creatures, 22 lands, and 15 sideboard. Let's check on the grid of the choices for the artifacts. So if you're not yet familiar why it's called Gearhulk, it's the namesake card of this one, Bright Class Gearhulk, which does like a search or a Ranger of Eos effect, that when it enters, you may search the library for up to 2 artifact, creatures, and enchantment cards with mana value 1 or less, and rebuild them and put it into your hand and shuffle. So basically not only getting you answers particularly, but also giving you a 4/4 body with first strike and trample. So let's see the one of the choices here. Probably you can notice the one-offs that are in particular the one that will be the search target for this card. So we have 3 copies of the Source Reliquary, basically the deck's main deck spot removal, which you just need to just sacrifice an artifact or creature to cast, and then the enters the battlefield, you can exile target artifact or creature upon controls up until the Source Reliquary leaves the battlefield, and you get the Ward 2 effect to protect itself. Basically, it's also quite hard to deal with or artifact removals, spot removals per se. And the other one up here, you'll notice we have a copy of a new card from Final Fantasy Phoenix Down. This is just basically a 1 mana cost artifact that has its effects that can return target creature card with mana value 4 or less from your graveyard to battlefield top. Or if needed, you can exile target skeleton, spirit, or zombie. But I think for this purpose is that you can get this one to return this mana value for less, which means that you can return again Gearhulk for another batch of ETB effects, and also recording another step for your opponent to deal with. And also we have Solgan Lantern, which is anti-graveyard shenanigans. So with this enters, exile target card from graveyard, and then you can sacrifice this one to tap only each opponent's graveyard is basically exiled. And if needed, you can just pay 1 tap, sacrifice this artifact to draw you a card. So with this kind of setup, we have made sure that we have some gears, particularly in the pre-sideboarded games, to deal with various kinds of metagame decks. And for the other 4 orbs here, we have Heard Holy Roam. This is just only to get you a 2 mana cost artifact that also can make you ramp into your 4 orbs or 4 mana cost or more spell for your creature spell. And at the same time, you can have your Gearhulk, this ability, and that creature control with power 4 greater against trample, and whenever this creature deals combat damage, you will draw a card. So a card effect per se, and also can help you ramp with your creature spells. Now, before we go with the lineup of the creatures, we'll check off the only battle in the deck, which is Invasion of Gobakan or Lightshed Array. So Invasion here goes that you can be able to check on your opponent's hand and exile a card that may be relevant or against to your gameplay, and then making sure that they can cast it later on, but they need 2 more mana to cast it, so basically delaying them. And also, when you're able to attack this with the battle, you can flip it into this one, which can also pump up your creatures. At the same time, you can use it to sacrifice to have them hexproof and then destructible until they return. So with the creatures, you see here we have a good option for several 1 mana cost, but I think the curve here particularly goes with the first one, with the T-Wormlet that can benefit with artifacts and can also put a percent counter for the first trigger, and it can have that touch if you want to alter more artifacts. copies of Warden Jeskai, which can also fix your card and can pop itself by the stopping artifacts and creatures. And of course, the partner is Novice Infector, basically a good way for you to have a one drop that can generate an artifact and investigate, and also be used to pump your Warden and the Wormlet. At the same time, one option here is Might, again for the disenchant effect against needed to answer non-creature artifact or non-creature enchantment. And for the 2 drops, we have 4 copies of Regal Unicorn, which is basically a very good threat on its own because of having to power and toughness equal to the number of land permanents you control. So that's 4 copies. A copy of Kalan, which also can create map tokens, or you can have this ability that whenever it attacks, you can reveal a top card, and if it's a creature card with mana with 3 or less, you can put it in your hand. Otherwise, you may scry it, or basically putting it, surveil it, and putting it in your graveyard. So, wrapping up the creatures or your 3 mana cost lineup. Of course, Sentinel of the City is the pseudo auto inclusion in this kind of deck, in which you can create a map token and can also trigger a 3/4 body with Vigilance. And the new inclusion, maybe, I think, if we're not familiar with, is Scrap Shooter, which is a 3 mana cost Raccoon Archer that has 4/4 body. It has reach, but when you're able to give your opponent a card, you can be able to destroy an artifact or enchantment that they control. So at any instance, any relevant enchantment, or maybe temporary lockdown, or any artifacts, or maybe Steel Cutter, you can punish them by destroying it. That's the only value of giving them an extra card draw. So that is your creature lineup. Let's take a look at the lands, since we have no more instants or sorceries per se. Of course, the mana fix here, of course, composed of Reservoir Ticket, Housewood Birch, Brushland, and with the 2 copies of Restless Berry, which also works well by popping up your creatures that is attacking. And then, of course, composed of several basic lands of Plains, 5 copies, and 3 forests. Let's take a quick rundown of the sideboard. Of course, since we are having to be metagame ready, I think for them they expect a lot of the Izzet Prowess decks, Azorius Omniscience, and other probably new builds from the Final Fantasy set. So they also considered to have this kind of lineup that is against them. First off, let's check on Authority of the Consoles, which is your way to have your opponent creature enter the battlefield tap, so delaying them per se, and also you gain 1 life in this process for the enter. Is one way for you to survive your initial assault, and therefore be able for you to set up your Gearhulks and your other needed creatures. So along with it also, maybe they start building this along with Shelter by Ghost, because this way could make your creature lifelink, at the same time having to exile a non-life permanent, and having this also making your creature ward 2 and plus 1 to 0. So that's 2 copies. And additional removal in the form of the Sorcery Quarry is also a very cheap way to tutor, and more of the Phoenix down, maybe for the lineup against mid-range or control decks, because you'll be able to return your Gearhulk and do another round of triggers. One draw with a Pick a Poison for artifact enchantments, and additional copy of Might for doing the same function. And so the needed ghost faction here is 2 copies, because you need to set up your graveyard removal as early as turn 1, so that for each of their opponents discarded a card from their hand or surveilling them to your graveyard, you will be able for you to exile it. At the same time, you can also exile your own creature, wherein you can activate this 6 mana activation later on to put each of the creature card exiled into the battlefield, and then making them at 1/1 flying counter, but also basically having them as a copy of your original creature. And for the other lineup here, particularly maybe Morton Invasion of Gabakan against Arizora's Control or Jeskai Control, and Ultimate Leech if the Esper Pixie is still going to be a thing here. So that will be your sideboard against them to punish them for having you to discard your card early on. So I think early on, overall, It's basically a good green-white aggro deck to consider now, with the Gearhulk as your basically gas and threat. And mana cost is pretty cheap. You want only 2 for this kind of deck. So you notice there's a lot of 1-ups and 2-ups for this one. Highest curve is basically 4. This is the Gearhulk, so you can be able to survive early on. You can have a good curve, and particularly still have a good gameplay for plan for the late game. And lastly, let's take a look at tokens. We have only map token and clue token from the Infector, and this one from the Sentinel of the Nameless City. So I guess that's pretty much it. I hope this deck would also perform well in the Pro Tour in the day 2 tomorrow. So let's hope for the best that they can be able to see more of this text action in the feature mats of the coverage. And guys, thank you for watching this one. We have again featured deck Selesnya Gearhulk with just Morton in Pro Tour Final Fantasy. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.